Hello, everyone. This is Rob Golfi with REMAX, the Golfi team. Welcome to the Golfi Real Estate Show with host Stephanie Vivier.
Well, hello there, Rob. Always great to get together with you. You always have such great information about the real estate market for us and great stories, too. And I understand you've got one for us. I do want to mention that you've brought a guest, and we're going to find out more about him coming up in just a little bit. So let's say hello right now to Ryland Hartley. And Ryland, we're going to find out about your company called Grapple in just a little bit, right?
Hey, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me here today.
It's awesome to have you.
Awesome.
All right, Rob, let's get into some of the real estate stuff, what's been happening in your life this week. And as you love to do, you've been trading out your swimsuit for whatever suit you use when you dive into the stats.
Oh, yeah, steady. So I was just going through from 2019 sales numbers right up till the end of August. We don't have September's numbers yet. And I'm looking at 2020. Now, we know COVID hit March of 2020 when everybody was sent home and work out of your house or whatever. So, and it shows here in March, in Niagara, there was 578 sales, right? And, they were hovering, looks like it was hovering between 500 to 700 sales, throughout the 2019 year. And then but in March, they hit 578 sales. So, and even though I think it was the 13th or 14th is when they said, okay, everybody, the world is shut down. So, and it shows April, there was only 292 sales. That's probably the lowest in who knows how long, because, everybody was at home. Things started picking up. Now, everybody had, what do they call that? The grocery store owners, the grocery stores, they had
the essential services, yeah.
Essential services. So pretty well everybody was an essential service at one time. Real estate agents, dog walkers, roofers. Everybody was an essential.
We were finding a way to make ourselves essential and not go crazy while we were quote unquote flattening the curve.
Exactly. We're radio show hosts essentials. We needed to hear you on the radio talk about COVID, right?
Absolutely. Not sick about talking about it at all, let me tell you.
That's it. So everybody was an essential service. So sales started climbing a bit in Niagara in May to 525. Now, this is where we really felt things were starting to roll. June, 856, and then it jumped in July and August. Over 1,000 sales in Niagara each month. And then it tapered off, boom, boom, boom. And then in 2021, this is where the boom year happened. If you look at this, in March of 2021, 1,321 sales. April, 1,342. And May, again, over 1,200 sales. And June, and over 1,100 sales. So, and that was 2021. A lot of people ended up buying in there. They were all in competition, and just everything was just moving off the shelf real fast. Then 2022, it still continued. It dropped through the summer. October, it picked up. That was the fall market. And then January, February, their sales were pretty decent. And then boom, March, April, again, over 1,000 sales in those months in Niagara. And then things started dropping. And it dropped as low as 354 sales in December. Like, it just went from 600 to 500 to 400. This is in 2022. So the peak, if you bought in March or April and closed in May, June, or July, you paid at the very peak of the market. It couldn't have gone any higher. That was it. You paid a lot of money for it. It's good that you stay where you are. Don't move for at least 5 years. It'll catch up. Now, the month of August, we're at 431 sales in Niagara. Now, in 2021, they were at 907. So we're half as much as a busy year, but it looks like the sales are usually hovering between 500 and 600 in the month of August. Now, if I look in 2019. August was 770 in 2019. There was no COVID going on there. That was just a normal market. And sales in 2019 were ranging from 450 to 800. So, will we see those 800 numbers again? I do think we will. I think it'll be 2027. I think we got another year of this market where it's a little flat. We did go through a correction this summer. There's no doubt about it. We did go through a correction. I was totally surprised by that. I didn't expect that. I thought we would flatline, but house prices did decline a bit. Not too crazy, but they did decline. So if you bought in 2021 or the beginning of 2022 and you were trying to sell this summer, you really felt the pinch of it. And Hamilton, the same thing. They're going through the same thing. Again, in 2020, you can see actually the sales jumped a little later in 2020 because of COVID. But then they started jumping, and then 2021 there was 1,173. There was, but not as high as Niagara. The sales for 2021, and then the beginning of 2022, you can see we hit almost 950 sales in March, and then 787, and then it dropped down to 292 in December of 2022. So there was a decline there and a correction in the market when it came to homes, but we're struggling this year. Last year, 2024 and 23 was a better year than it was in 2025. And a lot of realtors are jumping around. They're looking at changing different brokerages, thinking it's better. It's not better. Just if you're a real estate agent and you're looking jump to the Golfi team if you're going to do it.
That's right.
Don't jump anywhere else. So
what do you attribute this to, Rob? You have so much experience. You talk about COVID. That is 100%. And those low interest rates. What led to that 2021, 2022 spike that you were just talking about? Now, why 2025? We've got these geopolitical issues, the pressure that's coming from the South. Interest rates have come down a little bit, not quite to those levels. So what do you think the factors are?
Well, are you talking about the high sales in 2021 and 22?
Yeah, why have we seen this correction this
interest
year?
Rates.
Yeah,
interest rates at one. You can get a mortgage at 1.5%. Those are great. You're paying more equity than you are interest in those mortgages. People were jumping in, and that's what drove the prices up like crazy. And so right now, next year, there's going to be a lot of renewals. So next year is 2026. So you got the people that got their mortgage in 2021 with the five-year rate, right? They locked in for 5 years. So you got a lot of them renewing in 2026. And then you also got 2026, the ones that put 3-year mortgages on, and those are the ones are in 2022. So we've got a lot of mortgages that are going to be renewing in next year. So you're going to see a lot of people, usually people when there's renewals of mortgages, they have a tendency of thinking about moving. So they're saying, hey, you know what? Our mortgage is coming up for renewal. Let's look at maybe possibly upsizing, downsizing, or whatever they want to do. And there will be a lot of a combination of both, of upsizing and downsizing, because people's mortgages are going to go up because of the interest rates, which is not too bad. If you can get a mortgage at 4% or 4.25%, you are doing great. I have no reason that you should, you can lock in at a 3 to 5 year rate. I think you should. If it does get better, it might be better than maybe 0.5 point, but at least you're locked in for 5 years. But don't lock in and thinking about moving in 2 years. So you got to be very careful about that. It definitely, there's going to be a lot of changes happening next year, a lot of exchange. It'll be the start, but not a big start of people starting to move, but I think 2027 is when the big jump's going to happen. Builders and developers are going to start coming back, and a lot of them are hemorrhaging. These developers and builders, they're hemorrhaging right now, and they're hurting because they're not building much, and they have to they're paying for interest on properties that they want to develop in the future, and they got no cash flow coming in on sales that are happening now.
Interesting stuff as always, Rob. And in the meantime, you've always got those outliers, and you had an opportunity to tour a very pricey home. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I went to this house, and it's in Niagara. I'll just keep it that way. Beautiful property on the beach. There's beach backyard, so now you can just narrow it down.
All right. You're going to give me the address off the air, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was listed before for $6.8 million, right? So they, I'm not sure how long they had it on the market. They took it off, and I guess a couple months went by. They're calling us. So I had one of the agents that said to me, "Hey, Rob, I need you to take a look at this house and look at it." So, okay, no problem. So we go, and I'm driving up the driveway. It's a long driveway, obviously, in a state property. And as soon as I pull in, where the garages are and everything, and I said, I'm going to tell you, this is not a $6.8 million house right off the bat. Just the way the landscaping is done, just from what I see, there's a lot of unfinished things happening. And I go, and I basically said, I want to be out of here real quick because this is a waste of time. And so they took me for a tour of this house, and they have a big addition, garage, and a secondary house attached to this house with a breezeway between the two houses, not even studded, but not even drywalled. And then I'm going through their house, big house, probably about 5,000-6,000 square feet, just their house alone. And I'm going through it, and there's a lot of, it's dated, and there's a lot of things to be finished. Upstairs, it looks like there's a lot of patchwork, everything going on. So after sitting down with them, they say they had an appraisal done. First, and I said, oh, okay, no problem. And then after I said, well, wait a minute, I looked at this house. There's no way an appraiser would appraise this house at 6.8 or 6.5 million. So then I said to them, I go, listen, is that appraisal based on what you're going to do to the house? And they go, yeah. And he had his mortgage guy there too. And I was like, why are you having your mortgage guy meet here with me? And I said, well, I think, first of all, I think he's wrong on the appraisal. I've always argued against appraisers because I deal with the people out there, the consumer. I know what they think, I know what they're looking for, and I know what the vibe is in the market. Appraisers,
because a house is only really worth what someone's going to pay for it, right?
Exactly. So eventually they told me it's based on what they're going to finish. But I said, even if you finish everything, first of all, I said, I can't believe you even listed it at that price. I don't care about wanting this property because it's just ridiculous price that they want for it. And I said, first of all, you need to get a decorator, interior designer here if you want this kind of money. You can't cheap out on doing anything. And so I gave them a number for them to contact. I said, you need to spend money here. You need to get both floors on this main house done to the nines. And so anyway, and I said I wouldn't have listed it the first time. I said, the agent that listed it, I said, if you're looking at hiring him back and want my advice and my experience and go back to him, you can do that because I wouldn't have listed the house in the first place. I would have said, not interested. You are far away from $6.8 million. And I think you need to get everything done first and then let me look at this place. He's kind of taking the advice, and you could tell he's a little bit hurt, but he was appreciative of my advice. But we go to different homes like that, and this guy was looking, I think, to win a windfall on a property. It was a nice property and everything, but he was looking for a windfall. It doesn't work that way. It's not a lottery. I mean, if you have a house and you want top dollar for it, you better put top finishes in there. You got to have You got landscaping's got to be pristine. The corners, the trim has got to be done to you don't see no flaws. You got if you want top dollar, you got to hire top contractors. You got to do all that. You can't do half done, half not. And I just want to let people know it doesn't work that way. You can't just put a house up for sale and think somebody's going to jump at it. It doesn't work that way. People know value. The public, they know value. They know it better than the realtors.
All right, Rob, I want to know what you would sell it for, but we've got to take a break. So that question coming up, as well as escape clauses. Should you be using them in your real estate deals? Rob Golfi is with us today. This is the Golfi Real Estate Show. This is 610 CKTB, Niagara's News and Talk. And welcome back to the Golfi Real Estate Show. I'm Steph Vivier. Rob Golfi is with us today. He's also brought along with him a special guest from Grapple, Ryland Hartley, and we're going to find out all about Grapple coming up in just a little bit. But Rob, you left us on a bit of a cliffhanger there. You went to see a house that was previously listed for $6 million. You were very frank with the owner about what you thought he needed to do if he wanted to get anywhere in the near ballpark of that kind of cash. Driving up the house as it was, what would you have listed it at?
The highest I'd probably go is probably $4 million on this house. And that's based without the garage and the house beside it finished, and $4 million, and maybe 4.5 with the other part finished. It's got beautiful beaches, gorgeous in the back. And I looked at other sales. There hasn't been a sale in 5 years there in the entire area along the water with beach. The highest was $3 million, 2.8 or something like that too. So there hasn't been a sale in that price point. He has the property and he has the beach. And so I don't feel that he'll get what he's looking for. And the appraiser, he basically got an appraisal done based on what it will be worth once it's finished. Appraiser can't do that because he doesn't know what the finishes are going to be on the property, like when he finishes the house that's connected to the main house, and all the finishes that he's going to do in the main house. Yeah, appraiser, he's going to base it on what the guy's telling him, and I think that's just a waste of money for the homeowner. And the appraisal, obviously he got paid for doing what he did, and he's off and gone. But I'll tell you, there's a difference between when an appraisal comes through and a realtor appraises it, and you got to be very careful. We're going to talk about that a little bit. A realtor is going to base the price of the home based on what he feels a willing buyer is willing to pay at that moment. An appraiser goes based on history, what a willing buyer did pay for a home. So, and times change. That could have been a house 6 months ago. Now the market's changed, and I have appraisers call me all the time. They say, "Hey, Rob, I'm struggling with this one," and I'll say, "Hey, listen, take a look at this house on this corner on this street, a very similar house, and you'll find that is a very good comparable." And they'll look at it and say, "Oh my God, yeah, you're right. This is perfect." So we help them out, but again, it's what the consumer is going to be willing to pay for the house. It's not what an appraiser does. We had one in Niagara Falls. He had an appraisal done, and I said, this appraisal, I think it's wrong. I says, I can challenge this anytime. And he didn't like what I was saying. We did list it. We actually listed it below the appraisal amount because he kind of, felt, yeah, maybe you're right. And it still didn't sell. It still didn't sell. And I tried to get the right price for him, but he felt that it was way off the appraisal amount. And I said, whoever your appraiser is, he obviously, I don't know, he probably doesn't have his license. I don't know, because it didn't, he's way off on his numbers. Was way off. So you got to be careful when you're hiring the right agent and the right appraiser. You got to make sure you hire the right people to do everything from contract work to real estate to legal work to everything. Hire the right person. Otherwise, it's going to cost you more money. You think you're saving money with a discount person, you're going to end up spending more money.
When's an appraiser a good call then? What would we use them for?
Appraisers are always good to use, but you got to hire the one that knows that knows the area, that works the area. You know what the sad thing about is these banks, sometimes they hire appraisers. The guy's from Toronto. He's driving all the way to Niagara to do an appraisal. He doesn't know the market there. You know, like get the guy that lives and works in those areas, and then you'll get a true appraisal of any property. Appraisers are always I'll challenge any appraisal. I'll challenge. I remember I challenged one. There was a legal one there, and I had to sit there. And the guy says, "Hey, Rob, what do you think of this appraisal?" I says, "It's bogus." I says, "It's fraud." And he looked at me, and this was many years ago. And he looked at me. He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "This is a fraudulent appraisal." I says, "He didn't use the right numbers or anything." I says, "I'll challenge this any day of the week." And I said, you don't want me as a witness in court for that one. I said, so you better find. I go, because it's not going to be good for you. So and guess what? They did lose, because they must have paid some guy to give a fraudulent appraisal, and it was wrong. So there was a true appraisal. And the true appraisal came in at the price that I felt it was worth. So you gotta be careful there. You gotta be very, very careful.
Interesting stuff. Another way to be careful, of course, when you're working in a real estate deal is to put in some kind of clauses. And apparently, real estate agents are getting pretty creative with some of the clauses out there right now, Rob.
Yes. So the one thing is, right now, if you are buying a house, don't go in cash, like not saying cash, but do not go in without a clause that you sell your house if you have a house to sell. So many people have done that. And I'll tell you, a lot of realtors have made mistakes, or I don't know what they're doing. So I'll give you a perfect example. So when you're buying a house, you put a clause in there, conditional on selling your house. And it says in there that, hey, give us 60 days to sell a house, and if you receive an offer, you give us 48 hours to make a decision whether we can firm up, or you can pass, or the second buyer can get the deal. Perfect, no problem. Nobody's obligated. There's nobody that's going to be sweating it that they firmed up on a deal. But here's one that's happened years and years ago. I'm going to give you an example, and I probably told this story once before. This couple, they bought a house for $275,000, and they went in with no conditions. So that's a bad move, especially in this market. This market, you got to be careful. So they went in at $275,000. Their realtor said that their house was worth $350,000. They should be able to get that. It didn't happen. They ended up calling me. They had it up for sale for $350,000. They called me. I said, I can't discuss it. You're going to have to, work with your agent. And, once you're off the market, we can talk. Mm-hmm. He fires the agent, calls me up, and I told him your house is worth $300,000. And he basically said, I would not have bought the other house if I knew that my house was worth $300,000. Nothing he can do. He's already committed to the other house. He's already committed. So he asked me, I said, why don't you try selling it privately? And I said, you could save your money on fees and stuff like that. And he tried. He listed at $320,000 privately. Didn't go. And then he called me up and he says, hey, would you list it at $320,000? I said, we can try it. But I said, but the value of the house is $300,000. Okay, no problem. We sold it for $300,000. This guy did a lateral move. Right. He did a lateral move. He didn't need to move to this other house because he basically lost money on that deal. Mm-hmm. So when you're hiring a realtor, be careful. If you're going to go in firm on a deal, you better make sure that realtor that you have knows the price of the area, knows the price what you can get on your house. Don't go like some realtors. I don't know. They don't know their market that well, especially you get a Toronto realtor coming into Niagara Falls or St. Catharines or Welland or whatever saying, yeah, you should be able to get $800,000 for this house, and meanwhile it's only worth $650,000. Now you're going to base your numbers on $800,000 sell price to buy the next house. Guess what? You're in deep water when you end up finding out the true numbers, especially if you went in firm. So be very, very careful. Make sure your realtor knows the numbers, because it could hurt you and it could bankrupt you. It could give you so much stress in your life. You better be careful on that. That's why always use the escape clause when you're buying a house so that you're not committed. I've seen people, they went in firm, and I've seen other agents and their clients go in firm on listings that we have. We say, hey, listen, are you sure about this? And yeah, no problem. And meanwhile, they're sweating it. And meanwhile, they're 2 weeks before closing, they're asking us, we need an extension on closing for another 30 days. So be very careful out there for that.
Are you seeing more conditions in the market? You were talking about those times when everyone was bidding and there was no conditions. Is it happening more often?
We're seeing more conditions, and we're on offers, financing, home inspections, and insurance clauses. And we're finding that a lot of deals are falling apart over home inspections. People are getting a little finicky out there. You know, they're being very, very careful before they commit and go firm on the deal when they're putting an offer on a house.
And is there anything you've seen in the conditions, like the home inspection seems like a pretty standard one. Is there anything different that you've been seeing? Anything where people are getting a little bit creative on this?
Yeah, people try to, say, hey, can we move in before closing? I always never recommend that, because then you get to know the house, and then you say, hey, your house has got all these problems. You fix them, those are the basic conditions on there. Sometimes people try to do vendor take back, meaning the seller, gives a second mortgage. Obviously, they can't afford the house, so I wouldn't recommend it. If the banks aren't willing to give them, the 80% of it, or 95% of the money. Be very careful on those things. And if they haven't been through the house and they put an offer in, I never take those offers. Because they're just trying to tie up the property because they just can't make it at that time, and then they'll end up backing out. So I'll just say, hey, listen, you're gonna have to get your butt down here and look at this house. Otherwise, we're not even looking at your offer, because we don't trust it.
Okay, so that's not a serious buyer.
That's not. Well, no, because he's just trying to tie up the property so nobody else ties it up and he misses out on it. So we get offers like that. We won't touch that. If their agent's too lazy to drive all the way from Toronto, and usually they're out of town Toronto agents that are coming down and trying to tie up the property without seeing it, and then they'll walk through it, and then they'll say, oh no, we're not interested anymore. They'll do their condition of home inspection on it. And so yeah, you got to be very careful of that. We will not touch those offers. We just know that that's going to be a problem. They'll tie up the listing on MLS, and it'll hurt the activity at the time that it hits the MLS, and it'll definitely hurt the seller and the outcome of a price in the future.
And other than the condition of a home inspection, what's another must-have condition?
You know what? Insurance is important. Financing is important. Those are the top conditions in there. If you're just buying a regular residential home, it's always good to get a little bit of disclosure on there. Just say, listen, we want to know, verify, the shingles or whatever, verifying that there is no moisture or leaks in the basement from things. You can put that in there. You can ask them to fill out a form on that. A lot of people don't want to fill it out. You just have to be careful the wording on what you fill out, because a lot of times it has happened where a house doesn't leak water, but eventually water has to start eventually at one time, right? Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? So you don't want to be committed. Like if you know your house doesn't leak water and then all of a sudden it leaks a month after these people move in, you're kind of on the hook on that. So you got to be very careful on wording. Just say, right now, as we speak, there is no moisture or water leaks in the basement as of today, dated, and all that kind of stuff. So, and if it starts in 60 days after they move in, well, guess what? A leak has to start eventually, so maybe that's the day it starts.
Right. And can it happen, like if the wording is wrong and that leak does start, that they could come back on you like a year later, or how long would that be?
If it's a significant leak, yes. Let's say like we had a dry summer this year, and there was no rain for 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden the first rainfall, there's a leak. Yeah, definitely. I go back at the seller of the house and say, hey, wait a minute, you said there's no leaks, but the first rainfall we're getting water in the basement. I think you're hiding something.
Okay. All right. Well, we still have to get to Grapple and Ryland Hartley. He's with us today on the Golfi Real Estate Show. We are chatting with Rob Golfi today, the #1 REMAX team in Canada. Give them a call, 905-641-0308. Quick break, and we'll be back with more here on 610 CKTB, Niagara's News and Talk. Welcome back to the Golfi Real Estate Show. I'm Steph Vivier. Rob Golfi is with us today, and we have a special guest as well in studio, Ryland Hartley with Grapple. And Ryland, you have been hanging patiently while Rob and I have been chatting all things realty. So I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit and all about Grapple. So how would you explain what Grapple is?
Yeah, thanks so much again for having me. I mean, basically, what we do, Grapple's an Ontario-based tech company that is focused on AI and robotics for home building. So right now we've built homes in Waterloo, Stony Creek. We're building in Killarney. Really exciting. We have OCI funding, so we're an Ontario funded project through Ontario Centre of Innovation. And we started as a project out of McMaster, the Forge, which is the incubator there that we used. So basically going from that research stage the last couple of years now into the market. And it's very interesting times to be trying to build faster when it's, low inventory. So we focused a lot on technology and bringing in new clients and building relationships. So, Rob's kind of the master at that. So good to be here on the show. And we were working recently with one of your agents, with Brian.
Yeah, that's right, Brian.
Yeah, he's a smart guy, really, really good. He put a great package together for us. We're interested in doing some of our own developments in the future. And very, very happy to answer any of your questions about robots in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is such a fascinating topic. What got you interested in this, Ryland? Why did you want to go and build a company in this direction?
Yeah, so honestly, I'd been looking for something kind of new to work on. And we were in the sort of COVID hiatus that everybody was in. I ran an agency for 8.5 years, just like creative, software companies, those sort of things that we were building for our clients. I sold that list and, wanted to invest in something new. And I happened to be doing what everybody was doing during COVID, which was renovating. And I found that the process for renovations and, home building was just a little bit crazy. We have, about 4,000 different independent builders throughout Ontario, and it's very sort of like, segmented market. Like they don't really communicate with one another when you're doing a project. It's, a lot to manage. So a few of our, I would call them more like my tech friends were essentially saying, hey, isn't there any way to accelerate these timelines, make it a little bit easier to manage these projects? And that was kind of the first time we started talking about, hey, what would a tech system look like to solve some of these problems?
All right. So when we talk about automation in home building, you've got these, it's an AI-driven process. So what does that mean for people, right? Because people right now are like, oh my gosh, AI is, what we saw in Terminator or whatever it is. So how is that, bring it to the practical real world for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the way that we use AI in our process is mostly for interpreting drawings directly to the robot factory floor. So essentially, what we'll have is essentially anybody who has a Revit or CAD file, like a standard, architectural design for their project, they can just send that to Grapple, and we put it through a process that we call frame generator. And essentially what that does, it breaks every single component out in an individual standard wall or panel that we're going to be shipping to that builder's site by, the jack posts, the studs, top, bottom plate, everything. So we end up with essentially this broken out plan of, here's every single panel, every single piece of the home that's going to be built, labeled, numbered. Every one of those panels has an identity, and then we can communicate that through the factory flow in order to get it produced and shipped to site.
So a panel would be like a studded wall,
yes,
right? A studded wall with a cutout for a window to put in.
That's correct.
And also, what about the electrical? You guys already have the wiring set up in there?
We drill the holes and put the boxes. So we make it as efficient as possible to build on site for the electrician. To go beyond that, we essentially need CSA approvals. So at this phase for us, we focus more on the core bones of the house.
So if the wall is drywalled, not drywall, just the panels of drywall there, they still have to mud the house once they all the walls are up, right?
Yeah. So essentially, just to kind of clarify, like we do primarily framing through the automation process. So everything from your sheathing, exterior, in terms of exterior foam,
right?
Your window openings, all of those sort of things are done, ready built, and then shipped to
So
site.
the interior wall is not really paneled with drywall. Am I correct?
No, that gets completed later at this stage.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you build all the boxes for all the switches, everything, all that.
That's
and
exactly
boom.
right.
So that saves a lot of hassle for
A ton of time, which you mentioned interest rates earlier. Builders who are concerned about interest rates, they're usually holding the bag on these projects as things get built. We had a study by Zero Group done on the project in Waterloo. So the first 18 units of that project were built traditionally, and then the next 18 units when we came on were built using our system. We were building essentially what would have been built in 9 days in a single day. So 7,000 square feet in a single day on site.
A big house like that.
That's correct. Those were stacked townhouses, so 18 units.
Like, can you build a 4,000 square foot home based on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now with lumber and the lumber cost and the innovation that you do, because you still need a framer to come and put it together, right? On site?
We do have one framing crew, like our own framing crew.
Right. No, but could their own framing crew do it? Like, let's say a builder?
Yeah, they could just call us, Amazon style, and essentially like say the day they want it drop shipped, and we would have all of those panels on site, ready to be put together on site.
It's almost like a Lego sort of situation at that point.
Yeah, essentially. Like every panel is literally numbered, plates are down with numbers. Like we make it very, very simple, and then whoever is directing the job site can just follow that, and it's literally in the order that they need to construct it in. So it's very straightforward.
Would there be a savings if some guy wanted to do a custom home? Is it a significant savings for like even a builder?
Yeah, I
to
think
do a
so.
custom
I
home?
mean, significant. I don't know. Like it's some savings for sure, but the biggest savings is time,
the time.
And the headaches.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And if you've never built something at home or something of that nature, like it would make it certainly simpler to build a shed or something like that. But right now we focus on community developments, obviously, because we're at that stage of growth where we need projects that have not a single one-off home or a single shed or backyard addition or something.
Gotcha.
So we focus more on community builds currently, but certainly as we develop this out, I hope that anybody can bring us their plans and just have something shipped to them in a few days, right?
Wow. That sounds.
Yeah, I mean, this is really tremendous. The other part of it, Ryland, I think, that maybe people don't understand is the human error aspect, because usually when you've got these AutoCAD drawings, someone has to interpret them. So that usually is, someone in the office or whatever it is. And then you've got the people on site who, of course, everyone's well-meaning, but we all have had bad days at work and made a mistake. And that can be very costly for builders.
Yeah, I mean, robots don't really make mistakes that often. So, I mean, it's, right now our precision is within 0.06 millimeters. So, I mean, it's ridiculously precise the way that those machines move. And essentially, like when we actually get the designs on site, again, it's all been, calculated algorithmically as to the cuts and the sizes. Everything's been optimized. So one of the biggest findings that we found in terms of, savings was actually on the material side for builders. So just across framing on those first 18 units, the report came back and said we had saved them almost $25,000 just in terms of pure lumber cost. So that would have been lumber that would normally be recut, measured, went missing on site, et cetera, that a traditional builder is just, basically tossing out the window. We don't have any of that, right? Like panel goes up and the site's clean and there's basically very minimal additional cuts or additional lumber that has to be placed after the fact.
It's more just screwing everything together.
Exactly. Just basically attaching the panels together. Yeah.
So
That's pretty much it.
From when it's finished, the finished product, and Rob, you were talking about like the inside, we still need the electrical to go in, there's some finishing and things like that. Would anyone be able to tell? Like essentially everything that your automation process is done is covered, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically at this stage, and long term, we want to have these other services as part of our process. I mean, you can kind of think we're more like at like the Amazon S3 stage. Like our first product is making the framing really great. It's like the chassis of the car. So I mean, essentially, like everything that we do from here out will be built on top of that system. But we've perfected that, and I think as stuff gets implemented, while people are walking through, they can't tell the difference whether it's been traditionally framed or machine built. Apart from just the fact that again, the site's very clean, the site is accurate. They've saved on materials, things like that. Like it's built with traditional materials, right? So our goal is to make it seem like it's been essentially like hand framed, right? It should be as good or better using our process.
Tremendous.
So you get the plans, and the plans end up going through some AI machine.
Frame generator, AI, yeah.
And this thing just goes down the assembly line, and it just kind of puts it together exactly piece by piece, wall by wall. And
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, literally, 2 large robots and 2 conveyors. And, that's essentially how we're building most of the walls. We have like gravity fed guns that are firing for the actual studs and plates. It's pretty incredible, and we experience about 300 linear feet per hour doing it that way in terms of the build.
Were the robots from Europe?
No, these ones were we didn't buy brand new robots. We bought Fanuc robots that we use in our facility. But they were, secondary market robots that we refurbished with a company called Robotics Research in Brantford,
right?
And put those in place, saved a lot of money on our costs, and started, building and programming with them.
I did see something. There are companies in Europe that actually.
Oh yeah, there's like Brandec is a huge
right.
they're focused on building automation systems for these tasks. Again, for us, we're more focused on the brains of the system. So you might see us in the future get into like mining, satellite maintenance, other forms of, taking CAD drawings and, using automation to maintain or build objects. But certainly right now our focus is on, building homes. That's the first challenge we were trying to solve.
Right. So now you've got the framing part done. There's so many other components of the home. What are you looking to next?
Yeah, I mean, it's with homes specifically. I mean, we're starting to work with a few different research institutes in terms of building some new forms of robotics. Certainly in our space, what's kind of become a big talking point is this sort of factory production line already outdated? I think the whole industry is sort of like, oh, that's so exciting that there's, homes being built in factories and stuff. But we certainly see a need for new types of innovation, like humanoid, for example, coming into to potentially do certain jobs more on the job site. This will be a long ways away, but we're already having these conversations internally and with a few universities in Ontario that have programs around that. We're certainly seeing a rise in LLMs in terms of AI. So we have an MCP version of what is basically Blender, doing a lot of things with our design process. So you can basically think like architectural drawings done with, essentially by just chatting with the application itself. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes in the way that architects do their work and engineers do their work because of AI. So, at the end of the day, the public will just sort of see homes going up and homes being built, and it'll sort of seem similar to what they're maybe used to. But behind the scenes right now, technology is really changing, the entire process of how some of this stuff can be done.
And, that is so exciting, Ryland, because the part about housing right now that's very interesting is there's that supply issue that we don't have enough supply, but we also don't have enough skilled folks to do that. And, we've really talked about AI kind of being in terms of taking jobs, right? That idea that AI is quote unquote taking our jobs, that construction's like sort of the last place that can come. So I find this very exciting that we've found a way to fill this hole.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, our intention is not to remove jobs from the labor force. Our intention is to optimize the workers that are in that labor force so they can do more work. I think one of the challenges right now across the Southern Ontario market, and it's in a lot of places in the real estate market in the world right now because of, like you mentioned earlier, tariffs, uncertainty, these sort of things, interest rates, et cetera. If people aren't building a lot, what happens there is, the market starts to sort of, go to the bottom dollar. And you'll have a lot of, workers or laborers in these spaces, like framers, for example, competing for the same work that our systems are, right? So in that way, it'll look, tighter right now on that marketplace than it would in say a time where, you maybe have a normal sales year or something like this where more buildings are being built. So, we've actually found sort of a niche recently, actually up north, like I mentioned, Killarney as our next project. We're going to be shipping up to Northern Ontario because they still have a lot of the labor shortages, and they're still demanding, a lot of things being built for temporary workers and seniors' homes and things like that in those regions. So we're finding success there. We have 5 contracts with a builder, up in Northern Ontario. So I mean, it's an interesting time, but I think wherever we can sort of ship stuff within about a day's time, like that's sort of our market. And certainly our intent is not to take jobs away. I would argue anybody who is currently framing traditionally and wants to know more about this, like reach out and we can educate you on this stuff because it's definitely it's on its way. It's coming.
Question to ask you is how long, like let's say a 2,500 square foot home, how long does it take once you start the process into the AI machine to start putting it together? Like what's off the assembly line, let's say?
Sure. So I mean, like a 2,500 square foot home, we would probably be building all of those walls and floor systems within about 3 to 4 days in our facility.
Gotcha.
And then from there, essentially, it becomes coordinating with the project itself. So at that point, you can basically think we try to guarantee essentially one floor built every single day that we're on site with cranes and panelization. You know, if we were doing that traditionally, we would be, you know, saying a week and a half minimum, right? But we bring in the crane for a day, and it's there on site for a day, and it gets done in a day, right?
Oh, wow.
You'd have to level the floor between floors. So if it's 2 stories, like you're probably taking a whole day and a half doing that, making sure the floor is perfect before you move on to the next floor. But again, you can just immediately see how much faster that is compared to traditional build.
Well, this is fascinating stuff, Ryland. We're running out of time, though. Do want to point people to where they can find out more about Grapple.
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of done an inherently bad job of, keeping information online about this. It's been, but yeah, we do have some stuff coming. And
for being such a tech-heavy company, we don't have.
You can text me. Yeah, you can go to grapple.ca and you can learn a little bit more about our projects. We're at Grapple Canada in terms of handles, but definitely encourage reaching out and love to talk to people about the technology and what's coming in the future.
And that is GRAPL.
That's correct.
Fascinating stuff. All right. Well, Ryland, great to meet you. Thank you so much for being part of the Golfi Real Estate Show today.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
And thank you, Rob Golfi, as well. As always, give the #1 real estate team in Canada for REMAX Realty a call at 905-641-0308, robgolfi.com, GOLFI.com. You're listening to 610 CKTV, Niagara's News and Talk.